Britain's Prime Minister has been meeting with his cabinet today following a victory in a confidence vote. Boris Johnson is promising to draw a line under questions about his leadership, despite a significant rebellion from his own MPs. Downing Street says the Prime Minister will be setting out a raft of new policies and also setting out his vision for government for the coming weeks. Boris Johnson won the support of 211 Conservative lawmakers. 148 voted against him.
I think this is a very good result for politics and for the country. I do. Just in this sense, I think it's a convincing result, a decisive result, and what it means is that as a government, we can move on and focus on the stuff that I think really matters to people.
Opposition leaders have been highly critical of the vote. Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader, says the Tories have voted to keep a lawbreaker and a liar in number 10. Labour leader Keir Starmer has called the Prime Minister utterly unfit for office.
This evening, the Conservative Party had a decision to make, to show some backbone or to back Boris Johnson. The British public are fed up with a Prime Minister who promises big but never delivers. Fed up with a Prime Minister who's presided over a culture of lies and law-breaking at the heart of government. Fed up with a Prime Minister who is utterly unfit for the great office that he holds.
The Prime Minister has a number of challenges just ahead. There are by-elections due in Wakefield and Tiverton on June the 23rd. Opinion polls suggest that the Conservatives will lose both seats. There's also a Privileges Committee inquiry due to begin into whether Boris Johnson knowingly misled Parliament over so-called Partygate. Well, let's go to our correspondent Giles Gibson now, who's joining me live from London. And Giles, the Prime Minister's not out of the woods, is he?
No, not at all, Ollie. I mean, as the rules currently stand in the 1922 committee, which is that committee of Conservative MPs which ran the whole process and the vote on Monday, Boris Johnson cannot face a similar vote for at least 1 year after that vote was held. But we are already hearing some Conservative MPs here in London talking about potentially changing the rules at the 1922 committee to bring forward a potential vote again on Boris Johnson and his political future. We've been hearing from Tobias Ellwood, a Conservative MP who was openly critical, openly against Boris Johnson in the lead up to that vote on Monday. He has said that while he does respect the results, the fact that Boris Johnson won that vote of confidence, he's also said that he would support changing the rules of the 1922 committee, for example, suggesting that they could change it so that it's not 12 months, that you can actually hold a second vote, a subsequent vote, after 6 months, for example. I mean, you mentioned those two by-elections that are coming up in Wakefield and in Tiverton and Honiton towards the end of this month. Those are also going to be a potential threat to Boris Johnson's very fragile grip on power and his fragile grip on the keys to 10 Downing Street, because the argument that we have been hearing over the last few weeks, and especially in the hours in the build-up to that vote on Monday, is that Boris Johnson is a winner. That's what we were hearing from his allies, that he got that massive general election victory back in 2019 and that he can do it again at the next general election. But if the Conservatives, if they lose one or even both of those seats when we have those two by-elections at the end of this month, then that argument is going to be seriously undermined.
And Giles, what kind of policies do we expect the Prime Minister to focus on as he attempts to reset his government?
Well, I think one way that we could see Boris Johnson trying to reset his government is just changing the personnel at the very top. So we are already seeing some reports that Boris Johnson could look at reshuffling his cabinet, changing his cabinet ministers around, at some point even later this week at the earliest. Of course, in that cabinet meeting that Boris Johnson held the morning after the night before, we did hear him talking about policy more broadly. We heard him talking to his ministers, for example, saying that he wants them to look at cutting the costs of government in their different government departments. We are also expecting to see a couple of big sort of set piece events to try to move the conversation on. So, for example, we're expecting to see a big joint speech with Boris Johnson and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, next week, outlining their vision for the British economy post-Brexit. There is also talk about some sort of an extension to the right to buy policy. This was a policy that was brought in initially under Margaret Thatcher. It's a real cornerstone of Conservative ideology, and it allows people who are currently renting their council house to buy that house at a discount. However, if you ask people like Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, about what this moment looks like, they are saying, this is not the beginning of a new era for Boris Johnson. This is very much the beginning of the end of his place as Prime Minister.
Thanks, Giles.